welcome everybody. We're all familiar with each other. However, we need to keep in mind there may be people that come in for the first time, so it's useful to have the introductions on the recording, if that's okay with people. So could I possibly bring Noreen in, please?
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Noreen Cesario, and I am the founder and principal of Market Accents, which is a strategic marketing communications agency. We basically help companies find the voice, find the direction, and then help them look at the best way to actually market and communicate with their target audience. I think I can consider myself an inclusive entrepreneur. I've been working with quite a number of you, and I am very active in the sphere of women's economic empowerment and girls' education. So I am delighted to be here this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. John, nice to see you.
Probably the worst location possible. Sun streaming down, blue sky behind me. I could say I'm in LA, and you probably wouldn't know. That's a cheeky lie. I'm actually in Norfolk. I run a company called Spirit Motorsport, also run Spirit Air, and Jackie's going to do a short presentation. Afraid I'm going to have to depart from the call sort of about 10 minutes to 3, because I've got a family call with my mother's in a nursing home, and it's hard to keep in touch other than via video and times, etc. But I'm here until 10 minutes to 3 o'clock.
Brilliant, thank you. Lady Sharon?
Hello, good afternoon everybody. Hope you're all right. Well, I'm Lady Sharon Farley Mason. I'm the owner of Glam Sticks. I bespoke mobility aids and multi-award winning business, yay, finalist again this year in this year's She Inspire Awards. Proud to be a inclusive entrepreneur and part of the gang, as so to say. Yeah, that's me.
Mary, are you happy to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm sorry, my camera just doesn't work on the laptop.
Fine,
So you can only just get my name. I'm co-founder of Cecile Biot, and we were lucky enough to feature last Friday on this meeting. We provide ethical and sustainably produced magnetic badges called a magnetar, and we've created a new silver product called a Cassiopeia that represents women supporting women, and I'm proud to be part of this group as well, so thank you.
Just in time, Aaron, are you happy to introduce yourself?
Hey, so I'm Aaron Hornback. I'm the founder and director of Horizon Health Network, looking at providing holistic health care. So it's not just fitness, it's spirit, soul, and of course your physical well-being, nutrition, and make that adaptable to anyone's level of ability.
So it's lovely to see you all again. As I say, I think we're going to have people dipping in and out, and that's fine. So what I wanted to do, so I don't forget anybody this week, I wanted to just introduce myself and try to condense that a little bit. So I am the founder and CEO of Universal Inclusion and the Inclusive Entrepreneur. I'm an international advisor on increasing equality of access to life's opportunities, and also in terms of inclusive cities and organisations. I lead on the Women in Enterprise APPG on diversity and inclusion, and also Philia and the Pink Shoe Club. I'm a trustee for Disability Rights UK, and I chair the International Council of Caring Communities. I also am I suppose I'm on the FILT Advisory Board in respect of diversity and inclusion. I chair Fluidity and also Courage and Sparkle, 2 charities. I'm the chair of the Ability Today Advisory Board, and I'm also an ambassador for Glam Sticks and the 50/50 Parliament. And most recently, I've become an advisory board member of the New England Sports for Women, which is quite exciting. That's nice to have an international position in a field that I'm really quite passionate about. So obviously we changed our day, and considering that, I think we've done really well. I think it's a busy week for people. Ironically, I think the previous briefings we've had, I think people were just coming to terms with things. What I'm seeing this week is people are starting to get their head around, trying to do some work and doing work in a different way. So it's quite nice that we have got people present today and others that are sort of joining us later. So what are we going to cover again? So the Carpe Diem, the seize the day. I don't think we can have this briefing without mentioning our Prime Minister and the difficulties he's facing at the moment. These are challenging times for everybody. I still sometimes think I'm going to wake up and it's a dream, but it isn't. And it's very challenging and a steep learning curve. I'm really proud of everybody that we're working with. The resilience is really just kind of shining out at the moment from people, and it's really nice to see. So we're going to look at the generic business advice again. We're also going to look at disability related support. We're going to bring our colleagues in around health and well-being. We're going to showcase an inclusive entrepreneur, John Cowan, who introduced himself earlier. Now, with John having to dip out, I'm going to just read what he would have said to us all, and then at the end we'll have a Q&A. The way we're going to try this again a little bit different. I'm learning, we're all learning. So what I thought we'd do is actually look at some of these links. If you remember, we talk at this point about generic business advice and particularly government business support. But what I'd like to do now is just bring up some of these links and just look what they're actually putting on the links and if anybody's got any specific questions. So this is the most up-to-date one that the government's putting out in terms of support for those affected by the virus. And if we just have a little scroll down. Okay, so, right. So they're giving quite detailed information about how to access the financial support if your business has been affected. Now, we're not going to read all of this, but just to give you all a flavour of what is actually on these things. Gives some clear information as when SSP should apply, whether you need a sick note, whether you're self-employed with an SSP, etc. Talks about some advice around mortgage payments and things like that. So that they seem to be sort of combining what they're doing with other things that are available for people as well. So I think they are trying really hard to support people as best as they feel able to at the moment. However, increasingly there are gaps and there are people that are falling down the cracks. I want to talk a little before we move on to the next one. Do you remember me talking to you about Martin Lewis and his podcast and different things? We've got his link a little bit later, but I was listening to him again on the This Morning programme.
I was going to bring this up actually,
yeah.
Jacqueline. Yeah.
And in essence, I think what he's saying, and I think he's probably the one that can challenge this in a way that perhaps other people aren't able to. And he's obviously got a knack of getting to the nitty-gritty and telling people then what their rights are. So he is challenging government in terms of self-employed position. And he's actually starting to highlight to them the specific areas where what they're doing isn't quite hitting the spot. What he did say in respect of self-employment is that the government seems to have made a decision in terms of, in essence, who they're going to throw the lifeline to and who they're not. And that's actually been a decision, not necessarily where we've said in the past it's, well, they're just getting used to it and they may be a little bit more amenable. But what he was saying is they're very definitely supporting a category of people, and others they're redirecting to things like universal credit, etc. And I think telling is when, if you remember in one of the briefings, they started to say, we're not going to be able to save every business. However, what I would say and what I will hold the government in the generic sense to account is that in terms of people that have protected characteristics, we have protected characteristics and ought to be treated. Not that we are any more deserving than anybody else who finds themselves in this position, but the government ought to be conducting an equality impact assessment on their actual actions in this regard. Now, again, have they done that? I don't know. Is that something they're going to get round to? I think as people are starting to digest all of this, then these are the things that are going to come to the forefront. And I'm guessing that's part of what Martin Lewis is going to do, is actually start to say, well, actually, these laws haven't suddenly just stopped. These people still have rights and protected characteristics. And as such, you ought to be looking at their specific needs and making reasonable adjustments to what you've put in place to actually support them. So yes, we've got great information from the government, but definitely at the minute there is huge debate about who isn't getting the support, who it's not appropriate for. And again, unfortunately, in everything that I'm seeing, and if anybody's seeing anything different, please tell me, I'm not yet seeing anything relating to disabled entrepreneurs.
No.
Okay.
Can I just
Yes.
ask something there, Jacqueline? I watched the Martin Lewis as well. Yeah, it was fantastic this morning. I don't know if anybody, there's a couple of things. First of all, I don't know if anybody employs anybody else in their entrepreneurship. But he was saying about the forlorn. Did you see that, Jacqueline?
The furlough. The
furlough, sorry, yeah. The furlough, that if somebody is employed and they're on furlough, they can't work for that employer. However, they can work for somebody else. So I was talking to somebody this morning in a meeting, and they can go out and do picking in the fields to help the farmers. You know, they can work as long as they keep the distance. You know, they can work. The other thing I wanted to bring up, really, which is the more important one, is, you know, when they're saying about these books, that we've got to have books showing that you're in
profit, your account.
Yeah, you're in profit. Is that just limited businesses, or is that any accounts?
My understanding at the moment is any accounts. So
right.
And again, I think he is going to ask further questions on this.
Yeah, because he touched on it, didn't he?
Yeah. At first there was debate around whether this was turnover or profit. What he's implying now is that the government has made a very clear distinction, almost trying to say, look, if you weren't making a profit, you don't need it.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't understand how what I would call micro businesses operate their businesses, nor does it understand how disabled people operate their business.
Yeah.
Some people will have invested in the business. Some people are starting to grow. Some people just may not yet be in a profit position. He was also talking about people that take out dividends from the business, and it looks like they're not going to be possibly included in the support that he's put into place. So yes, what government is saying at the moment, if you've almost got either, first of all, they said the 3 years, then they said, well, one or two, then they're allowing people extra time to submit their accounts ending this current financial year. If they can do that within the next, I think we're now in next 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Yeah.
Unusually, they'll take that into account as well. But they are, it appears, saying if you don't show that you've had a profit and you can't show that you've been affected in terms of your profit, that route isn't going to help us at the moment. However, that's not taking into account the contribution that we make to the economy or the losses that we have, whether we have profit or not. So it's a really strange scenario, and he's, you know, luckily he is just going back, and you know, he's challenging the Treasury, he's challenging the DWP, and it's, you know, I think it's good to kind of like keep on top of what he's doing, because actually they're answering him, which is good. So that's quite good. But it was a very interesting session. So if we go on now to the next fact sheet that we want to look at today, we'd obviously given you a link to the DWP and the issues around the DWP. Now, interestingly, the DWP Access to Work website has not put anything at all around how they are responding to the coronavirus. So still, there's nothing specific from this particular discretionary award. What they have done, they've just made people aware that, as is usual, there is an annual increase in the cap. So there's been a small increase in the cap. But again, if I can remind everybody, if your award is in place, you don't benefit from that. that only benefits people who apply for an award following that increase. Again, that's a bone of contention for me. It will always remain a bone of contention for me. If you've got an award in place, that should be an annual increase, but however, they're not doing that. So again, despite the questions we're asking, there's nothing specific coming out from Access to Work at the moment, or the DWP. So I think we're moving on now to one of the NHS websites. And again, you know, we're not going to dwell too much on this, because it's literally, again, please have a look at it. It's updated. I think we've got a link to the World Health Organization as well. I find that we're in a bit of a dilemma. Personally, I would always go to the World Health Organization, yet we're seeing around the world different leaders dismissing them at the moment and actually almost blaming them for what's going on and the different reactions. However, it is quite comprehensive. Again, what was interesting this morning was some of the myths that are being put forward were being kind of, you know, the medical and the myth being separated out. It's interesting, isn't it? One of the things they talked about was it's a myth that if you have lots of drink, etc. Now, actually, I mean, I'm not medically qualified, but my understanding is that if you have respiratory things, it's good for you to have lots of drinks. So if it wasn't corona and it was flu or something else, you would actually be encouraged to have lots to drink. However, so all of that debate's going on at the moment in terms of, you know, how's it spread still? How, you know, the debate around whether you should wear a mask, whether you should wear gloves. Some of the actual healthcare workers are the best, I think, when they're putting videos forward showing how, you know, yes, please do wear your gloves, and they're showing us how you're actually creating more cross-contamination by wearing your gloves, which was quite interesting. So, because actually, you know, unless you're going to maybe go home and wash those gloves every time you're coming in and out, but they showed again, putting some spray stuff on the gloves, how, you know, you carry it with the glove. You may think you're not actually putting yourself at risk by wearing your gloves, but again, it's all being debated, and some of it's personal choice, I think, and some of it is, you know, the advice that's being given. There's a lot of debate at the moment in terms of, is it airborne? It's really interesting, because people will, you know, if some people, there's a school of thought that says, well, actually, from the point it's actually leaving the person to the point it lands, it's technically airborne. Mm-hmm. But again, please keep looking at this, keep yourself up to date in terms of the guidance. Again, I was watching the I think it was the health minister being interviewed this morning, and it really being questioned on the personal protective equipment around not just healthcare workers but key workers and frontline people. And again, you know, the Mayor of London was coming back and saying actually the advice we're getting at the moment is not, and yet people, you know, people in those situations are contracting the virus, and unfortunately I think they were saying something like 13 bus drivers had died after it. So, you know, that when we think about key workers, there's a lot more key workers, you know, post men and women, etc. So yeah, again, it's just, I think at the minute, look at the advice, and it is very much down to people's personal choice. Do I feel now if I was going into a supermarket, would I wear a mask? I possibly would. I probably wouldn't wear gloves, but I would possibly wear a mask. But it again, weird times, and I think we all have to kind of like listen and then make our minds up, really, because it's conflicting. It's very conflicting. This may affect some of us, it may not affect all of us. Those of us that are within the charity sector, there's now some guidance around what's the government doing to support charities now. And I've noticed there's a lot of organisations that are now starting to support charities now in a way that they'd almost stopped doing before. So that's quite nice to see. So looking at this one as well, it's starting to think about things like charities are very, very, very firmly overseen, if you will, by the Charity Commission, and they have very strict criteria to adhere to in terms of whether you continue to be a charity. It looks like, as in everything, there might be, you know, some flexibility in things. So, for instance, if you can't submit your accounts, etc., and so on, and I'm not saying that is what they're going to do, but this is what's being debated at the moment, and how a charity is going to survive going forward. So again, if you are a charity, then this might help you as well. Okay, we wanted again to particularly look at the employment and self-employment help. One thing that has come out yesterday, so as well as, again, this is a comprehensive site, it's got lots of information. Unfortunately, not a lot of it is going to benefit us, but there is a lot of information, and there's a little podcast there for you to have a look at with Martin Lewis again. But one thing which is probably a sign of the times is that the government is considering changing the rules around insolvency. So obviously for businesses that are, you know, maybe through no fault of their own, do fold at the moment, may end up going bankrupt or whatever, the government is looking to see what it can put into place. Well, you know, I have no idea how they're going to do this, but they're almost going to have to do a blanket kind of like, you start again, and there's no detriment to you because of what's happened. Okay. All right, thank you. Again, has anybody looked at the grants that are available at all?
No.
Right. You know, it's filtering through saying that that money's gone to the local authorities now, so the local authorities actually should have the facilities in place to do that for people. But again, it's tending to be people that have premises, pay business rates, etc. So again, it's whether we're going to benefit from that at all. I'm hoping you can still hear me, because I think we're still having a few gremlins on the.
Yeah.
We can hear
No,
you.
you're clear.
That's fine. That's okay. Right. So if there's nothing more specific in terms of the generic business advice, we'll move on to the disability specific support that's been, well, let's just say disability specific support. In essence, obviously, theoretically, people would say that we can actually have access to everything that's been put into place. Sadly, that's not proving to be the case. Okay, the issues, I think everybody voiced them very clearly at the last session. The issues remain the same. I have had a further response from my MP, and if you remember last time, I'd gone back to him and said, thank you very much, but if it's just gone to the DWP, it's just going to sit there. And my MP did say, you know, almost you're not going to get a reply anytime soon. So I did go back and say, you know, my earlier email did ask for it to be presented to the Treasury and the House. So I got a further email saying that he will now do that. You know, again, I'm trying not to seem despondent about this, but I'm just completely dumbfounded. I think that this is just not getting the profile that it should get. That, you know, it's hard, and I really don't want to believe this, but it's hard not to think that we are an acceptable loss, and I don't think that should be the case. I don't think that should be the case. So again, I've spent the week, like I know you all have as well, tweeting. I've followed up most of Martin Lewis's ones. The one he did today, I followed them up, but he was actually highlighting the different groups. So I was adding on all the time, you know, and the disabled entrepreneur, because again, even he wasn't picking it up, because again, it's just not on people's radar. Trying to, wherever there's a news article, just trying to kind of like get it on the radar. But it's clearly not, it's not hitting any buttons. It really isn't. If you look at the sort of things people are looking at the moment, they're looking at self-employed, not particularly our sector. They're looking at, and rightly so, the kind of the progress of the virus, etc. They're looking at the community work that's going on, and they're looking at kind of innovation, but innovation in terms of development of ventilators and things, and all of that. I am not saying any of that is less worthy, but I think, you know, we're kind of like, we're way down that line at the moment, and somehow we just have to try to bump up what we're doing. Okay, so anybody got any specific questions or any updates from their own experiences at the moment at this point? No. Okay, all right. So again, please do, you know, as you have been doing, just please try to sort of get it on there. I mean, I have even, because prompted, I think, again by Noreen, is just I've reissued information out to the local media, as you know, we are very close to Media City. So in terms of radio stations, morning programmes, etc., and even connections of the people that have specific responsibility in, for instance, the BBC around disability news. But again, just not getting anything back at all.
Yeah, we were going to do something with the BBC, weren't we, Jacqueline?
Yeah. So I
connect up afterwards or something.
Yeah, we can do. I mean, I kind of like resent what I'd already sent, but I've not got anything else. I am having a conversation with Bina. I don't know if any of you
I've heard of Bina.
Yeah, so Bina is the lady that did, when we had the event in Media City,
they
did filming, and
that's fine. Yeah, of course.
Bina used to have a post with BBC and different things. So yeah, and she might have some ideas, but when I speak with her tomorrow. Okay, but that's a social thing. It's not a kind of official newsy thing, right? I wanted us to reinforce so that everybody is really clear what recommendations we have made to the Chancellor and the DWP with respect to our particular complexities really around the Access to Work Award and the other measures that have been put in place. So just to recap, that we have asked them to suspend the annual cap. Now, clearly that they've just upped it again. They're not, that either they've not seen this request or they're not going to do it. To fast track any new claims, because people are wanting to start new businesses, and suspend the annual turnover requirement, to accept digital submission of payment requests, to allow for longer access to the mental health strand of the award. At the moment, if you do get that access, it's for a short period of time. People's mental health is really suffering at the moment, and we think that they could do more in this regard. Fast track for ergonomic in respect of working from home. Asking for the award period to be extended for 2 years without review. And fast track any additionality claims relating to support workers who are on 12-week lockdown or going to isolation in respect of the virus, whether that be themselves or members of their family and so on. We want them to recognise and consider the way disabled entrepreneurs manage their complex health conditions. And the reason I want them to do that is this thing about what the Chancellor's put in place for self-employment. He needs to understand the complexities that we have, the on-cost that we have, and how we manage our working life. So he does need to put something specific in place outside of what he's already considered. So consider additional measures of support which do not require us to give up our Access to Work award as part of the process. Because again, most things that he's put in place, we can't take advantage of it. We have to step out of our business. We would then lose our Access to Work award. Getting back into it would be a nightmare. And again, finally, for him to amend that self-employed income support scheme to recognise the particular needs of the disabled entrepreneur within it. So I've done this specifically because if you get a chance to speak to people, or you want to send something to somebody, you can just, you'll have these slides and you can just lift them and share them. I'm guessing they wouldn't want to listen to the whole thing, but if you can isolate these particular slides, and perhaps Sarah can help people who, like me, would need some help to do that, then please do share them, because I think this would help if you're contacting your MP to do a summary of what the issues are and send these recommendations. And I think that, let's try and get these out everywhere. Okay, is there anything else you think we've not covered on there? What I'm going to do straight away this time, you're familiar with the other colleagues that we're working with, but I'm going to bring Erin in straight away because I think it'd be good. Again, I love having your perspective, Erin, so over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, carrying on from last session, I was mentioning that I'm doing the half-hour segment at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
I finally got, I think, a link to the Facebook page for Horizon Health, linked into the LinkedIn group. And I'm going through some how do I do this technology stuff as well. So I'm getting some support in that. But yeah, so from this week, I've actually mentioned universal inclusion for those of you who want to join in. All the segments that I have done over this week so far are still on the page. So if you want to go in and look, so what I've done is I do kind of like a where are we at, you know, maybe mentally or how we feel, you know, if we're feeling depressed or whatever we're going through and how to turn that around. And then I go into like a nutrition segment on different things that you can make for yourself. And then the physical activity. So I have adapted all of the physical exercises to those who may not be able to, for example, get down on the floor or stand up or run or whatever. But all of them are adapted for sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
So you've got ability to do everything. And I've noticed that there seems to be, yes, people are kind of getting their head in gear on things, but I think there's also this kind of like a heaviness coming on people as well, thinking, how long are we in this? Because you hear one report from here, one report from there, and there's so much going around that it's going to make your head spin. And so today, I mean, something for all of us and those who may be watching later on. There's a thought of, you know, when you're feeling down, or if you're feeling have a frown, turn that frown upside down into a smile. And one of the ways you can do it is put on something of music that's lively, as if you're at a party, and just, you know, I say put on your party clothes and put on some music and just enjoy the atmosphere that music gives. Kind of lift that heaviness off of you and enjoy the moment that you're in. Even though it's quite difficult, but it helps with changing what's going on in the mind, and tries to put a bright perspective. And secondly, the sun's out. For those of us who can get out in the sun, vitamin D is good. It's really good for us. So that's another attribute I would like to give today. But if you want to follow me on those 1 o'clock sessions, or if you can't get it then, they'll still be on the page. If you go into Horizon Health Network on Facebook, like that page, then it's there. You can get the link through the Inclusive Entrepreneur group page as well.
Brilliant, that's great. Can I echo what you've just said then around the music? Because just to share, so last Friday, I was really, part of my condition, I can have low mood anyway, and suddenly felt very overwhelmed with it. And somebody sent me a little thing and said, right, just put some ABBA music on. ABBA did this little, like an hour-long, like, I don't know what you call it, like docudrama about ABBA. And I did feel much better. It doesn't take it all away, but it did just really make me feel quite upbeat. Yeah, so that's really good. And thank you for that, Erin. And I think in this section today as well, what I'd like to talk about is, and I've tweeted about this today, and I don't often do this because I am not political. Very much, you know, I'd love us to have a sort of government like New Zealand where, you know, everybody's working together. And my understanding was that we'd agreed to have a lockdown for 3 weeks, and that's what people have been working towards. Now, nobody, I think, would expect that the review at the end of the 3 weeks would be saying, right, lockdown's gone. But it's my understanding that what's been reported, I think it was yesterday, that there's not going to be a review. And that's going to make some people very, very upset, anxious, angry, and so on. So I did send a tweet out this morning, which was basically, you know, I don't normally get into the politics of it. However, you know, nobody expected that from the review we would suddenly be going back to where we were. However, not to have a review is undemocratic.
Very.
And that means that we don't, it's almost like that we don't count in the process. And I think, unfortunately, even if they just say, you know, as a cabinet, we've reviewed it, we've taken advice, we don't feel it's the right time to come out of lockdown, I think that would help people. Just to sort of say, no, we're not reviewing it, is going to cause so many problems. So, you know, again,
so we're just going to let it go. So
well,
everybody after the 3 weeks is just going to go back to the normal lives as though
no. So what they're saying was, if you remember, they said we'd do this for 3 weeks and then they would review it.
Yeah.
No, if they review it now, the likelihood is they're going to say we can't come out of lockdown yet, and I think everybody would agree. But when they were asked yesterday, is it going to be reviewed this weekend? First of all, they didn't give an answer, but then they sent out a response later, which said no, there will be no review this weekend. That's what's upsetting people, because, you know, everybody understood if they'd have said we still need to be in lockdown, people would have said, all right, okay. But to actually sort of encourage people to take part in it, knowing there would be a review at the end of 3 weeks, and suddenly to remove that is not a particularly democratic way of doing it. So again, in terms of when we're talking about people's mental health, people who were looking towards there being the review, you know, being part of it, having this two-way, we're all in it together, I think this may have a very detrimental impact on people's mental health, that doesn't take place.
Yes.
But that, you know, that's just, you know, in terms of the health and well-being side of it, we could find as we approach the weekend that we see possibly more mental health issues. They were saying this morning that there's been a spike in the number of suicides, and then also possibly unrest, where people, because there's not been the review and you don't feel part of that process, people could possibly start to react badly. So I'm hoping that they maybe come back and acknowledge the need. You know, it's a conversation in cabinet, isn't it? It's a conversation that then they just say, we have reviewed it, and I'm sure you agree that at the moment we need to be doing, yeah.
So, Jacqueline, if I can just interject,
Thank you.
The Downing Street confirmed that a review would take place after the 3-week mark, which it's originally committed itself to. So I think they may mention something in tonight's briefing or tomorrow. But so far it seems like, where first they said, Dominic Raab said, we don't think we'll review it yet, it may be delayed. Downing Street confirmed that no, they're going to stick to their deadlines. So hopefully that may go some way towards easing that unrest.
I hope so. Because the backlash when they were saying no was quite strong. So
what would happen if they didn't review it? Would we?
Well, we would stay as we are.
Right. Okay.
You know, which is nobody's wanting to change that. It's literally it's expecting the will of the people, but not including the people in the decision making. That would be very difficult, I think. We'll move on to the next bit if that's all right. I'm happy to stay at the end if anybody wants to talk about anything more specific around. And I know Aaron's very open to being contacted as well. So thank you so much. Okay. Now I think John's left, hasn't he? In terms of, I can't hear him, so I think he has left now to go.
Yes, he's left.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. So I think we're going on now to the part of our session where we do introduce and showcase our entrepreneurs. Now what John's done is given me the wording to read, so forgive me because I am going to read it, so I'll be sort of like not looking directly at you for some of this time. So John has an organisation called Spirit Motorsport. I was really interested to find out more about what he does, because when he was talking last week it was quite interesting. So Basically, I'll read it as he's written it. So, thank you for giving me the opportunity to give a brief overview about Spirit Motorsport and Spirit Air. First is to explain what Spirit Motorsport is, its core values of being a company with a social ethos at its foundation. Currently, we are working with Gina Watkinson, who is 16, towards our long-term objective of either taking part in Le Mans or at least getting some of the drivers that we back into that race. Now, again, if John had been here, I'm sure I should know some of these names, and I don't, so apologies. But maybe if anybody's got any questions, I'm guessing if he's put the name in, they must be in motorsport. They have to be actually some involved in motorsport in some way, shape, or form. The Le Mans 24 Hours is the very pinnacle of sport car and GT racing, and the ultimate test not just of a car and human, but also character. Gina would be the first openly LGBT driver on the grid at Le Mans, so we're pushing for that. Ask a man or woman on the street about motorsports, and they will mention Lewis Hamilton and 22 millionaires racing in a Grand Prix. Although this is a big part of the sport and the highest level, the motorsport industry in the UK is massive, with 500,000 people earning a living from the industry and its supply chain, from F1 engineers through to event security, catering and cleaning crew. The assumption is that there is no role for disabled people in the sport. As a disabled person myself, I hope that in a small way I challenge this stereotype and actually have to admit, held the view that motorsport was not accessible to disabled people. You may be surprised to learn that the founder of McLaren, Bruce McLaren, was disabled. However, overcame this to win Le Mans 24 Hours for Ford in 1966. In the 1950s, Archie Scott Brown overcame disability to win multiple times in sports cars. On the mental health front, James Hunt battled chronic depression to become the 1976 F1 World Drivers' Champion, so it can be done. Spirit Motorsport are a brand ambassador for Norfolk and Suffolk Unlimited, a campaign by the New Anglia Local Enterprise Partnership to attract inward investment into Norfolk and Suffolk, along with new startups. As part of our corporate social responsibility, we hold the Youth Marquee for Work and have done so in encouraging enterprise for young people. We are champions of Gateway to Employment, a scheme to help former offenders into the workplace, and are supporters of Norwich North MP Chloe Smith's Norwich Action for Jobs, which seeks to address the issues of economic inactivity in the under 26s. My personal background is in marketing and PR. After finishing university, I did the normal mixture of postgraduate filler jobs, as a 6-month stint on the floor of a chocolate factory, and telesales for products ranging from double glazing, financial services to vacuum cleaners, and finally a stint in IT. Sales convinced me that life as an employee did neither fit with my aspirations or worked for me to maintain good mental health. So in 2002, seeing a gap in the market, I established Marlin Ford Sports Marketing and Sports Agency. I found professional football to be close shop, so focused on driver management with a British touring driver called Hyla Breeze. We would have seen the slide of a Renault Clio, I think. I'm guessing that would be a connection with Hyla. But John will be with us next time so we can answer questions on this. It became clear that the commission-only driver management model was not sustainable, so I put a team together to take on the British GT Championship with a Renault Clio. Plan was to use British GT programme as a springboard for a Renault return to the Le Mans 24 with Renault Napoleon sports car. A number of factors stop this from happening, but as Elon Musk, founder of Tesla, says, if things are going to plan, then you're not pushing enough. You're not pushing the boundaries hard enough. Through my management of driver, Enzo Mucci, I got not only to meet but build up a good working relationship with John Surtees and his son Henry. John is the only man in the world to have been a world champion on motorcycles and an F1 World Drivers' Champion for Ferrari. Having John as a mentor taught me a lot about motorsport, but life in that self-belief is key to success. Through hardcore working and networking, I was able to build up a number of contacts in other parts of the industry, such as hospitality and my other passion, aviation. The contacts in those sectors allowed Spirit Motorsport to launch Spirit Air, a private air charter business focused on the motorsport sector. And he ends it there. I mean, that's quite phenomenal, isn't it? And this reminds me, and I think this is what I will hope the Chancellor should be reminded of. When people say to me, and I read a lot of this in research papers, that disabled people are often making business out of a hobby, and they're perceived to be not running real businesses. And I would challenge people, because the entrepreneurs that we see are pretty incredible, and they are all running bona fide businesses and showing some incredible innovation. And it's wonderful to see. Okay, so that's John's presentation today, and obviously any questions, then I'm sure he will answer next time. So our last part of today is obviously our Q&A session, and that's basically if there's anything you specifically think you've seen today that you'd like to. I've actually quite enjoyed that we've had the questions as we've gone along.
Yeah,
I think that flows better.
I think that's been a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. But if there is anything anybody specifically wants to raise at this time, then please do. Right, that's brilliant. Because I was also reminded on my learning curve to try to keep our sessions to an hour. That's apparently the good time to have one of these sessions, and I think we've done that to the minute, which is perfect. I think we've done that to the minute. So again, I just like to say thank you to everybody. Again, just to recap in terms of the Inclusive Entrepreneur and what we're about, you know, we are a global network. We are promoting and supporting economic growth through inclusivity and supporting the people that are in that space, whether they are an inclusive entrepreneur themselves or whether they are supporting us to take that movement forward. And I just like to say again, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you all again next Friday. And you know where I am if you need me before then. So thank you so much, everyone. Happy Easter, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.